we did epithelium all before the break. And can't you see some typical questions too about, so if we're talking about basement membrane, which tissue were you thinking about? Epithelium, connective tissue, muscle, or nervous tissue? Who has the basement membrane out of those four? Epithelium, excellent. You see how these questions are going to work on chapter 4? It's just not going to be terrible. Okay, so what do we know already about connective tissue? Well, we know it had specific characteristics that if you want to belong to the family of connective tissue, you already know you have a short answer question, right? Then you better have what, and what. Do you remember this at all? They're like, we didn't study short answer questions for tonight, right? But wasn't it that you had to have cells, right, to be part of, and you saw that. What else does areolar have in it besides those nuclei? What kind of those little stringy things that look like hairs in it? What are those? They are fibers. Excellent. So you have to have cells, and you have to have fibers, and you have to have something that glues it all together. What's that glue that holds it all together called? Ground substance, right? So if you want to belong to the family of connective tissue, that's your last name, then you better have cells, you better have fibers, and you better have ground substance. That's your rule, okay? That you have to have those three characteristics. And we know this is a short answer question, but let me tell you a little bit more about those. Well, you already know something. Can you name me the 3 fibers that go here? You didn't study this for tonight, did you? I know. You just studied the practical information, right? Well, I'll give you the 3 fibers. There's a rope-like one, and they were?
Those are
Collagen, excellent. And then there was one that was stretchy. Elastin. And then there's one that's net-like, and that is the reticular, right? So there's the 3 fiber types, and we even said that's another short answer question, right? Because we handed those out on Monday night. That's another short answer question on the test, right? So collagen, elastin, and reticular fibers, right? Those are the 3 fibers that make up the connective tissue, okay? So we said ground substance was the glue that holds it all together, right? And then cells, we didn't really talk about the cells, but we know that sometimes they have osteo-whats, did we say? They're osteocytes. So cells can be either sites, okay? A site, something site, right? Or they can be like, and remember this word too, wasn't there fibroblasts? And those are both types of cells, okay? They're both types of cells. But they have different jobs. One of them is mature, old, kind of like me, the kind of people that wear their things instead of, all right? And so those are called sites, okay? The mature cells are called sites. So you need an M word after this for mature, since I ran out of room. So those are the mature cells, okay? The mature cells. An osteocyte is a mature cell. An adipocyte is a mature cell. What does it mean to be mature? Well, to be immature, and I don't really like this, it's kind of dumb, because you know what? They're secretly the ones that do all the work. Because the immature ones produce all the fibers and the GS. What's GS? That's ground substance, exactly. So if you're talking about a fibroblast, guess what it does? You're talking about a fibroblast that belongs in, like, you know, dense fibrous connective tissue or an areolar connective tissue. Their job is to make all the fibers in the ground substance for that tissue. So yeah, you call them immature, but they're really the workers. The mature ones are like, hey, yeah, you guys do all the work, right? Right? So that's how it works, right? And I like to think about it this way, that teenagers like to have a blast. I mean, if that helps. If that's too stupid for you to even write down, don't write it down, okay? But the immature one is the blast, and they, or here's another good word. So blasts are the builders. Okay, B for B, does that help? Blasts are the builders. So you want a typical question on the test then? Mm-hmm. All right. Name the mature cell in bone tissue. Osteocyte, ding ding, okay, just like that, okay, just like that. So name the immature cell in areolar tissue that produces all the fibers in the ground substance? Fibroblast, you got it. Okay, that's just questions right off the test. Okay, so if you know that blast derivative word and the site word, then you've got both of these, okay, as a way to understand them. The blast are the builders, the sites are mature, they don't do that work, okay, so that's good. All right, one more thing, just words, 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 always anatomy, physiology, words, words, words. These two terms, these two things together are called the matrix. I sound like I'm talking about a movie when I think about that, right? Okay, the matrix, and that is the ground substance and the fibers, okay? For some reason they group these things together and they talk about the matrix. And maybe it's because what the cells are sitting in. I mean, I guess you could think about it that way. The cells sit in the matrix, which is the fibers and the ground substance. But that's a frequent word that you'll see. So you could say that the blasts produce all the what? They produce all the matrix for the connective tissue. Okay, so there it is. And that's very distinctive of connective tissue, that they have cells, fibers, and ground substance. Okay, so that's the first characteristic. Here's the second one. The second characteristic is that they are all derived from mesenchyme in the embryo. Well, that makes no sense to us right now. We have done no embryonic study at all, and so we're just going to write that down until the very last part of class, and I'll give you a secret about that, so it'll make it easier to understand, okay? But the word is mesenchyme. So when you were first born, you were how many cells again when you were first born? When you were first conceived, weren't you a fertilized egg? That's what you were, right? And then one cell became two, two became four, four became eight, blah, 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 blah. Well, at a certain point when you have a grouping of cells, they start becoming something different so that they can become all the other cells are going to have to become. Because eventually, you're going to have epithelium, connective tissue, muscle, and nervous tissue, right? Well, that's an intermediate. Mesenchyme is just an intermediate, and that's what forms connective tissue. Okay, the third is, in terms of vascularity. Well, let's go revisit that word, okay? We said epithelial tissue is very vascular or not. It's avascular, meaning it has no what? Blood vessels, good, okay? Vascularity is varied in connective tissues, as you would guess, okay? It's varied in connective tissues. You can look at cartilage, and cartilage is almost avascular, meaning it doesn't have very much what? Very many blood vessels, right? Okay, but guess what bone is? Surprisingly, you would think it was avascular too, wouldn't you? Because it's just so darn hard. But you know what? There's a ton of blood vessels inside of bone. Isn't that wacky? Tons of blood vessels inside of bone. It's very vascular. All right, how about this tissue? Adipose is the tissue that has what in it?
Fat.
Fat in it, good. Do you think there's a lot of blood vessels that go to adipose tissue or not very many?
Not very many.
Well, let me give it to you this way, because most people say that, but let me give it to you this way. So adipose stores what for you? Fat, like triglycerides. How much were triglycerides worth in the last unit? $1,000 bill, okay? Now, in our community, we have places where we store $1,000 bills. They're called what? A bank, okay? Do we have lots of roads that go to banks, or do we just have them off in a pasture somewhere that nobody can get to?
Lots of roads.
You have lots of roads to a bank. They're on the street corners, aren't they? They're on like the corner of the intersection, right? So there's always tons of roads to a bank. There are tons of roads to your fat supply inside the body. Because the body never knows when you're going to stop eating, right? Hardly, right? But you never know that. So adipose tissue is highly vascular. This is why when you have like when people have fat removal and they just kind of suction out the fat to get rid of fat, when you start jamming in these like metal probes and start sucking things out like that, you can damage blood vessels. You can send fat into little floating emboli into blood vessels, and that's very serious. And that's why that's very dangerous. But never mind, that's another story. So we have different vascularity. It's not avascular, because some are vascular, some are not. So we have varying vascularity